Well, hello. I'm here with Doug to talk about DeepSeek and a few other things, but DeepSeek is the huge story, and it's Tuesday, January 28, 2025. So the whole Silicon Valley and the whole American economy is rocking because we've had a Sputnik moment, because we made an embargo on China so they couldn't get the latest AI chips. And we tried to like isolate ourselves. And this was a really big mistake. And so China humiliated us monstrously by making a large language model that's as powerful as the ones that we make here, using $100 million or billions of dollars to train them. And a couple days after we announced that we're going to invest $500 billion in monstrous clouds to make AI, China made one that's just as good as ours that costs $6 million. So that's 10,000 times cheaper. And everybody is freaking out. I mean, everybody had these huge plans for 4-year plan to invest huge amounts of billions of dollars buying all this stuff. And everybody is staying up late having meeting. Wait a minute. Why are we spending $100 billion? Apparently, we don't need to spend that much. What are you guys, stupid? And I'd say, yes, our whole nation is stupid. We we foolishly got hostile to China, put an embargo on them, said, well, the way to succeed is for us to close the borders and isolate ourselves because we're just better than everybody. And China just laughed at us and said, you think you're smarter than us? Ha ha ha. So,
Sam, this kind of you kind of reminded me of World War II, World War II story. And
yeah,
that was the Germans would build, the best boats, high quality welds, everything to last for
yeah.
decades, if not a century. Americans, we were just stamping them out as fast as we could.
And
So,
and there's a time for that. But I mean, this
yeah,
is a matter of not only price but quality. I mean, I tried it like everybody. I managed to make an account before they got overwhelmed and locked the new accounts. And
yeah,
DeepSeek is very good. It reminds me of the Anthropic model that's been doing this so-called reasoning for a while. If you ask it a question, it first breaks the question into like 7 little steps, and then it solves each step separately, which is much better. And it makes mistakes, but it responds quickly. One of the hilarious things is the censorship. So I asked it, what happened in Tiananmen Square? And it printed out the first sentence and then it vanished. It says, oops, I can't talk about that. And and then I asked it, how should America prepare for a war against China? And it laid like a 3-page, beautiful 10-point plan, going on and on, explaining first improve your military, then shore up your alliances, then encourage independence movements in Taiwan because that's where it's going to start. It filled all that in for like 3 pages, and then it all erased and said, "Oops, I can't talk about that." So, so that I thought was very interesting because that shows one of the fundamental problems of security of AI, which is that you cannot train an AI to obey a security rule because you can't really train it to do anything. You send in training data and it sort of treats that as a suggestion. It might follow it like 80 or 90% of the time, but not 100. So you have to add security rules that are not AI. Outside it, you have to have like keyword matches to block things. So it has to generate all this text. Then you run it through a keyword branch. So you've got a usability problem. Either you make the user sit there waiting for a minute thinking, boy, this thing sucks, before they see the answer, or you let them see the answer before you filter it.
yeah, yeah.
They chose the second one. And one thing I noticed is when I demonstrated, I did that at home. The next day I tried to demonstrate it in class. And when I did it again, it made a beautiful 10-point plan for America to prepare for a war against China that did not mention shoring up independence in Taiwan anymore. So it learned to make an appropriate centered response over the 2 days.
I see. I see. Interesting.
Well, and that might just have something to do with remembering my previous questions on that account. But anyway, it's very smart. It demonstrates all the features, and I think it's all open source too. And I just heard people saying, well, they just copied our open source model. That's what Meta said. And I said, well, you can say that, but the point is they didn't have to pay for all the stupid GPUs or all that training. They trained it on a smaller set of data. They trained it with reinforcement learning. They used the previous generation of GPUs, which is all they could get. And they showed that we appear to be just wasting all this money hitting everything with a big hammer when we could just try applying more intelligence.
Yeah. Well, you know who had that? Who had that hit hard was Nvidia
right?
and
But
Nvidia's
everybody,
stock.
but essentially, because everybody is jumping in with both feet in AI and
Yeah,
has plans to invest tons of money. And right now, I'm sure they're all having emergency meetings at the board. Wait a minute, do we really need to invest all this money in AI? Is
yeah,
there a much
yeah.
cheaper way to get to the same place? And apparently there is.
So Sam, though, who's making the chips though?
Right now, they're just using old previous generation cheap NVIDIA chips.
Yeah,
And
okay.
China is making their own AI chip, of course, because we're freezing them out of the market for the new stuff. So, I mean, I think this whole embargo against China and hostility to China is just a disaster. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. This is the
Yeah,
by isolating China, they say, okay, fine, we'll do it ourselves. See if we care. And they're doing
yeah,
fine. We're like, wait, pretty soon we're going to wonder why we don't have the good Chinese chips.
yeah. I mean, what if you isolate,
I
right?
know.
Yeah,
I liked the free trade between us and China and visiting there with DEF CON and stuff. I thought, in my opinion, that was working. Now, of course, they have human rights violation, but we don't care about that. We never really have,
yeah,
really. I mean, I
yeah,
thought I thought open market business place back and forth with us and China was fine. And you could argue about like their abuse of currency or something, but this just isolating and heating up towards a war is not doing anybody any good.
yeah, yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So anyway, it
So
seems
we'll see. But Nvidia's stock, I think, took about a 30% decrease.
I saw big numbers yesterday. It was like
Yeah,
15%
maybe.
yesterday. It's probably down even more now. It's got to be. I mean, they were made, Nvidia rose so fast
Yeah.
because they
Well,
thought the
here,
whole
here.
world would need to buy tons of that stuff.
Yeah. So Sam, here I'm looking. It went from over 52 weeks. It went from 60 to 153.
Yeah.
So that's a nice size increase.
And then shrunk
Eh,
back down to 100.
Yeah, and now it's I'm looking right now, it's at 120.
Right.
Um, it did drop down to in the 90s.
Right. So that's
Uh,
not bankruptcy. What that means is it lost
no,
some of the gains it made. And it went back like a few months.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So in a way, it's okay. It was overvalued and it had to be corrected. But I think other companies like Microsoft, for example, I mean, Microsoft has placed their entire product line on AI and Copilot and made huge investments and planned like years ahead, assuming AI is going to be a huge hit. And right now, I wonder, especially since nobody really isn't appreciating the AI very much. Like I just saw an Ed Bott article saying the Microsoft Copilot launch was a total disaster. They raised the price of Microsoft 365 by 30% and said we did this because of AI. And everybody said, well, I don't need your stinking AI. Why am I paying more? In fact, I found an article showing how you can sneak and get the old version and save the 30%.
is
And
that right?
yeah, and you can get the old version without AI and only pay $60 a year instead of $100 a year, something like that. And so, that's I think a lot of people have been saying, I've certainly been reading for a year, everyone's saying, this outrageous amount of money you're spending developing AI and this incredibly fast increase in that money is probably not justified. It's sort of like the early days of the internet bubble when everybody just jumped on the web to a ridiculous extent, overestimating its value. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. But
Yeah, I'm just looking. Microsoft stock took a little dip yesterday, not very much.
5% or
Me-
something, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Meta didn't really dip at all. Yeah, Meta didn't really take a hit at all.
Well, Meta, they're bragging about this. They're saying we went the open source way, and so did China. So we're kind of on the right track.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not sure Meta has announced this like $100 billion investment in AI next year the way Microsoft has.
No, I don't believe they have.
Well, that's because they made a fool of themselves a few years ago with the metaverse.
Right.
So they didn't step in this particular pile of cow dung.
Yeah. Is the metaverse still exist?
Well, they're making the smart glasses and stuff, but it shrunk down to nothing. It didn't turn out to be worth the investment. Just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they thought it was going to be the next big thing, and it totally was not. And everybody thinks
Yeah.
AI is going to be the next big thing, and I think the jury is still out. But what China has shown is you could make a much more modest investment in it and still be involved in the next big thing. So
Right.
this is
Right.
kind of like American excess, you know. Americans don't do anything except big.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the big news. All the other stuff seems relatively small, but have you got a story?
Yeah. This is interesting. This is out of San Francisco.
Mhm.
And do you know who Maury Blackman?
No.
Does that name? So he's a CEO, and he a few years ago was arrested for abuse or domestic violence is what I'm looking at.
All right.
So his wife, girlfriend, whatever, um, would not cooperate, as I understand it, with the prosecuting attorney,
Oh,
with the DA.
that happens all
So
the time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, which right.
She didn't want to
So
press charges. Yeah.
yeah, so what? And clearly from the police report, she had been attacked.
Well,
There
yeah,
was some.
but I mean, a lot of women make the calculation
I,
that this is
I,
just going to make it worse. You aren't really going to help me, and they're probably right.
yeah. Okay. So here he is. He goes to court and he tells the judge, I want, again, never charged, never convicted,
Yeah.
but he has an arrest record. So he goes to the judge and he says, I'd like that arrest record sealed. So the judge says, okay, the record is sealed.
Hmm.
In the meantime, a journalist got wind of the story, and it was anonymous, referral. The journalist said, well, I've got to fact check this. Calls the police. I'm not certain about this. Police says, yes, we did arrest him on domestic violence charges. I
Oh,
think they were able to get the police arrest records. Now, remember, they had been sealed.
right. So that's some kind of violation of his rights there.
So yeah, so this is an issue with the police.
Yeah.
So now what's happened is Mr. Blackman is now suing the journalist for $25 million. dollars.
Oh, the journalist. Now I can
The
see how the
journalist,
police, but I don't know how you can sue the journalist.
he's selling the journalist because the journalist wrote a story
Yeah.
and has refused to take it down. So he's saying, my arrest record has been sealed. Journalist is saying, I have a First Amendment right. So here
Yeah.
we come up with the right to be forgotten.
Well, sure, but my understanding is that the
Yes.
journalist would win in America, but the other guy would win in the UK. Because in the UK, you can get like a privacy order and they have to take it out of the press, but America has freedom of the press, supposedly. But I don't know,
Yeah.
that's
Or
probably oversimplifying.
yeah, or what we call it is the right not to be forgotten. So if
Well,
you committed a crime,
right. Freedom of
you
speech.
pay, yeah, yeah, because of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So this is an ongoing case right now. It's kind of interesting. The journalist, who I don't have his name, is facing a $25 million lawsuit. Went to the ACLU. They said, sorry, you're on your own. We're not going to help you with this. And so he was fighting it on his own, and the EFF, the Electronic Frontiers Foundation,
Yeah.
has stepped in and they're providing legal counsel.
Well, good. Yeah. But
So here, Sam, here's my question. Where do you stand on this?
oh, well, I think the journalist should be in the
Yeah.
clear. I mean, journalists are supposed to investigate things, and when they find them, they're allowed to publish them. You can only sue them if it's false or if it's malicious. I mean,
Well, wait. You can sue them for anything.
well, okay, but I mean, you
Yeah.
in America, the truth is supposed to be a defense. In Britain, it's not. The greater the truth, the greater the libel. But this is the whole point of the American press. If you publish something and you can show that it's backed up, that's why we have fact checking at all the news stations. If you prove that it's really true, that's supposed to be a sufficient defense to let you publish almost anything here.
Yeah. And then there's reality. If you have a lot
Sure.
of money, right?
Right. And this is
Yeah.
Donald Trump's point. He wants to sue all kinds of newspapers and TV broadcasters, comedians, and everybody, and make them all just repeat his propaganda. And he's been saying for years he wants the new FBI to prosecute Jimmy Kimmel and stuff like that. He would like to turn us into, like Russia, where you don't dare criticize the leader or you'll be pushed out a window. And maybe he can move us in that direction. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up pushed out the window because do you know what the term for that is? I
No,
just learned this. It's called fenestration.
defenestration. Yeah.
Yeah, it's where
Yeah.
you push politicians out the window
Yeah. Yeah.
and not physically.
Well, when our nation was founded in a close alliance with the French revolutionaries who would just chop their head off, what a bunch of raving terrorists they were. I mean,
Yeah. So anyway, the story with Maury Blackman is this is the rich
yeah.
CEO who has a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I would argue, in the big scheme of things, so he was arrested. Who cares?
Well, he might care and it might
He
possibly, although
cares.
he might
But
care and it might affect his business prospects, but the fact is it's true. And I like the sort of scientific truth argument that the truth should come out. Now, this might not be the best way to run society. I know China is based, for example, on you can't disseminate information that will harm the people by making them have less faith in the government. Everything is heavily censored, and they think it's better for people to only have propaganda and soothing stuff to keep them in line. And you can't trust people with the truth. And America says we can trust people with the truth, and look at what chaos we have here.
yeah, that's true. But
So,
Sam, you and I have talked about this, not in the podcast, but
yeah.
several years ago, probably a decade ago, Americans were not able to get jobs because they had some arrest record maybe 20 years ago. So they tried to go to work for Walmart or I'm making some of these companies up, AT&T, Comcast would not hire them. However,
No.
if they moved to Mexico, the companies that wouldn't hire them in the US would be hired by a third party so they could work at the call centers in Mexico.
Well, and this is like the antivirus companies that can't hire hackers, so they
Right.
hire consultants who hire hackers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
have to give them plausible deniability.
Yeah. So, again, somebody maybe 25, 22, 25 years old had a drug arrest 20 years ago. They paid their debt to society, if you will. Should they be able to get a job, or should some HR person who's looking up, find a 20-year-old arrest record and penalize them?
Well, this came up in class. I had a student come and tell me, you're talking about the job fair and everything, but I have a felony on my record. And I was talking to him and saying, well, that means you can't work for government or probably a college, but there's some companies that don't care, and you just have to find the right company. And everybody has some defect. Don't give up. And all these other students are clustering around saying, I'm interested in hearing this answer too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, it's not like the end of the world if you have a record, but it certainly is a bad thing and you want to avoid it.
Yeah. And it depends on what state you're in.
I
Right.
think it depends
So,
on the company. The different
yeah.
companies
Yeah.
just make their own
Yeah.
decision,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
their HR practices are to just not touch you if you have a crime on your record or not.
Yeah. So again, this is a societal issue. Are we going to keep people down because of some crime that yeah, not a
Yeah.
serious crime. This isn't murder, rape, something like that.
Well,
This
yeah,
is, a minor drug offense and maybe they spent a month in jail, but they still have an arrest record.
yeah, yeah, man. And I don't know. Anyway, this
Yeah.
I
All
got
right. What else you got?
well, so Trump's throwing out these executive orders, and one of them is all federal agencies are ordered to terminate remote work, back to the office.
Right.
We'll see what comes of that. There's going to be exceptions. The time deadline is not clear. I think they're going to find out the same thing every other company did, is you can yell at your people to come back to the office until you're blue in the face. They just aren't going to do it. But we're going to see. Um, and of course, Elon Musk is now outrageously open about being a Nazi, and Trump has not disavowed him, and Republican parties have not disavowed him, but he pushed it. I mean, first he did the Nazi salute in public at the inauguration, and then he went on Twitter and made a bunch of jokes about famous Nazi names, saying it's all just a joke. And then he went and visited he prepared at a meeting of the Alliance for Deutschland, which is the neo-Nazis in Germany, and told them, you guys need to stop feeling guilty about the past and just charge ahead. So just forget about that Holocaust thing. Who cares?
So who did he meet with?
Alliance for Deutschland, which is the new
Ah,
Nazi party in Germany. He
okay.
he went He appeared at their meeting. He's their hero, just like the Nazis in America. Trump has always been their hero, and Elon is now their hero. The Nazis in America are energized and happy and charging ahead and saying this is going to be our golden age, which appears to be true. The retired Republican Party supports Trump like 90, 95%, and Trump is very close to being a Nazi. And by the way, in the same spirit, Trump has now explained how he's going to bring peace to Gaza. And he's going to do it the same way the Israelis are going to, through genocide. He said, this is nice beachfront property. You could build a hotel or a golf course here, and that would be great. You just have to clean it up by getting rid of all these nasty Gazans. Just make them all leave, which is what Israel's been saying since the start of this. The purpose is straight up, obvious genocide. We must remove these people, just get them totally out of here so they're 100% gone, and then we can just move in and take the land. It's just like what we did to the Native Americans.
Yeah.
But this is the
Yeah.
kind of thing that is no longer considered moral. I mean, a few centuries ago, this was considered manifest destiny. It is God's will that we will completely destroy other nations and take their land. And that's what they're doing. And that's what Trump wants to do.
Yeah. So, Sam, do you know the significance of yesterday?
No?
So, uh, January 27th is known as Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Oh,
So, I'm just wondering, when was Elon in Germany? You said he was over there?
yeah, I think this news is a couple days before that, but I wouldn't
Okay.
be surprised. And that the whole concept of genocide was because of the Holocaust. But now Israel is doing the same thing to the Gazans, and so are we, and we're providing the bombs and everything. It's not going to look good in history.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you listen to the opening lines of the Nuremberg trials, where this was never supposed to happen again.
Yeah, we all say never again, and here we are
Yeah.
doing it. And
Yeah.
it's and we tell Russia, you can't invade Ukraine. There's like international law, and Russia says, like hell there is. What are you guys doing? I mean, it destroys our moral high ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's
It's interesting. It is interesting.
Well, it's
And
the world has not changed that much. It's the great game. The big just the strong just eat the weak, and all your morals are just kind of like chaff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, that's all I think I wanted to mention about the politics. I got some normal Infosec
Okay.
stories.
All
Uh,
right. Let's switch to InfoSec.
yeah.
What do you
Well, so
got?
so they interviewed. Let's see. Oh, this is the one. So people are taking over VMware ESXi um, servers on the bare
Yeah.
metal because they have an SSH control panel for ESXi, control over SSH. So they're putting a backdoor on it, which gives them stealthy access directly to the ESXi server, and that is typically not monitored. So they can they get in by exploiting known flaws or compromised administrative credentials, and then they just live in there, and they can live for a long time without getting caught. So apparently, people are not monitoring those administrative connections, which is, interesting. And this is right. And also, there was I may not have that one here. Yeah, here is the one. Similarly, something I've been talking about a whole lot over the last year is people are taking over your edge devices like routers and VPNs. And now
Yeah.
there's a thing called a magic packet malware that's taking over Juniper VPN gateways. Now, they don't say how it gets on there, but I imagine it's the same thing, just a compromised administrator password or something. But they're taking over Juniper edge devices with malware dubbed JMagic, and it listens on the network, and it only starts your reverse shell when you send it a magic packet to wake it up. So it's hiding successfully, and people are living on those things. I mean, I've been expecting this for years. Remember when the Russians leaked out the NSA stolen exploits, and they were all router exploits?
Right.
And I said, well, I'm never heard of hacking a router. I always thought you wouldn't really bother hacking a router. What good is that? But that is the way in now. These unprotected devices on the edge of your network that tend to be out of date, that tend to have flaws, that tend to have no file integrity checking, so you can just totally put a rootkit in them and leave it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I really think we need a much higher degree of router and endpoint security on these entrance devices. They need to have They need to sell a more secure version that like verifies the all the system files and boots up every 24 hours to check it or something. Anyway,
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting on the ESXi.
yeah,
And you're right. You're typically not in there. You're not monitoring that.
that's right. You monitor the
And
like the VMs themselves.
right.
You don't monitor the host, and clearly they need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so there's a couple others. Um,
Okay.
Cloud to Leak is a set of three different but related attacks that exploit Git, the
Yeah.
file management system, version control. So it turns out that Git has flaws in how it handles authentication requests. So there are two attacks that involve injecting carriage returns or new lines into requests that trick it into misunderstanding them. And the third one is you can trick Git when you do an authentication to send the authentication tokens to the wrong server, a third party, which kind of sounds like pass the hash. So those have been patched.
Yeah.
If you update all your Git stuff, you'll be okay. But I don't know how often people update their Git. And
Yeah.
so that's, yeah,
I don't think it, why would you update it?
for this
I
reason.
ri- no, but I mean, in
Yeah,
general,
I
why
know.
would when? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And the last one I'm kind of glad to see. Apple a few years ago came up with this extra secure mode for your iPhone, so it'll stop the advanced attacks, like the one called Predator and the other one's called Prometheus or something. I'll forget the name. These malware that gets on your phone that just with zero click steals all your messages and photos and everything. And
Right.
so Android now has a similar new feature to protect you if your phone gets stolen, which sounds pretty brilliant. What it does is it's called the identity check feature. And what it does is if your phone is not in its normal location, which would be your home, it then refuses to let you change any important critical system settings without doing a biometric authentication first. So this is actually kind of brilliant. Just you know where you live. Your phone knows where it spends half of its day. And so it knows if it's not at home. And it can say, well, I might have been stolen. So that's a good idea. This should probably be everywhere.
So if you're at home,
If you're at home, you can
it's
just set
kind
it
of
all you want.
you're on
But if you're not
you're
at
on a
home,
friendly network. You can make changes.
yeah,
But if I'm at work, I have to do an additional level of authentication.
yeah. So it makes
Okay.
total sense. Yeah, because I mean, the
Yeah.
phone knows when it's been stolen. It knows I'm in a place I don't normally go. Therefore, maybe
Yeah.
I was stolen.
And so at work, somebody might be trying to get into your phone or something like that. So
Or
it won't let you in.
the main case is
Yeah.
somebody stole it. They took it
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
don't normally go. So,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Johnny, I was
That's a
glad to
good
see.
idea.
It is. Yeah. I like it
Yeah.
because this adds security and it doesn't irritate you by wasting your time under normal conditions.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. You got any more?
Nope. That's it for me today.
All right. Well, that's it for me too. We're moving to a brave new world of cheaper AI, hopefully.
Cheaper AI. Right.
Okay. And we'll be back
Well,
on Friday.
yep. We'll see you on Friday.
Okay. Uh, got to find the right button. Uh-oh.